Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Lehr with me, your host, Imperial Dane. And we are off here to a Propagandacast Lehr on the StuG 3 Ausf G or StuG 3 Model G. One of my personal favourite units, as some of you might know. Sort of just out of sheer randomness. It is, as I mentioned, one of my favourite units. It's an assault gun. And of course that means it's not a tank. I repeat, the StuG is not a tank. Again, there's some people are going to seem to think, it's got a gun, it's got armour, it's got turrets, it must be tank. No, it doesn't have a turret, it's not a tank. First that bit out of the way, the StuG, there is an overall reasonably solid piece of armour for the Germans. Again, you can call it armour, but not a tank. Slight difference there. In that regard, it's a very nice bit of support armour for your units. It can reasonably deal with most threats and in general numbers, which is where you want it, and also generally slightly more achievable, due to it being pretty much the cheapest piece of German armour there is. With 280 manpower, 95 fuel, it's slightly more expensive than a T-34-76. Of course, unlike a T-34-76, again, it's not a tank, and in some regards, it falls behind. On the other hand, it excels in other departments. But overall, you use it to support. Unlike the T-34, which can actually also attack, move around, and be all spiffing and fancy, the StuG cannot, and if you try to, you're most likely going to end up with a wrecked StuG, or in worst case, you're going to hand 0 or 1 to an opponent who's more likely to know how to use it than you do. So generally, you want to avoid that. But overall, the StuG, in some regards, have some of the slight same stats with the S-35, and again, some people seem to think, because they have that, they rather ought to operate in the same terms. It does not, and it should not. The S-35 is an excellent tank destroyer. The StuG is an assault gun. It can function like a tank destroyer, but it is not a tank destroyer exclusively. It's more there again for supporting infantry. It can actually deal with infantry. Already here, noting one poor shot, having knocked out a poor Fedorov right here. I mean, it's not going to be, say, an Ausf or a Panzer IV in terms of overall effectiveness when it comes to dealing with infantry, but still, in general, again, supporting infantry, it can actually do alright. It's not uncommon to see a StuG at the end of a fight, as long as it's well preserved, have actually knocked up quite a few infantry kills throughout a fight. So in that regard, well use of a StuG can prove quite helpful. So that's a little thing to keep in mind. You generally want it to support, not, taking up the front fighting here. And there we go. One shot there. Russian dead. Scout cars generally also suffer a bit. In this case, that was a slight miss. Another advantage of StuG is, and of course also something to keep in mind, and I'll just point that out, I mean, it has low health in comparison to most other German armour as well. It has only 480 hit points. Most other tanks have about, I think, 640, sort of medium armour. This one has less, which means you can only about resist about 3 to 4 shots, depending on what's shooting at it. Anti-tank guns and such, 3 shots. IS-2 or bigger, 2. So that's also something very important to keep in mind. It does have decent frontal armour, but generally it's not going to be the sort of thing you want to, again, absorb fire directly with. You can get it out of a quick, nasty situation, but again, you're not going to be, spearheading an assault with it. Another thing, of course, to keep in mind, I mean, it's got decent AoE. I mean, it's not got Panzer IV AoE or splash damage or something like that, but it's got alright. That combined with a high rate of fire makes it alright. Now, of course, here I'm slightly using it probably how they shouldn't be doing, but even then, I mean, we keep seeing raking up a few shots there with its high rate of fire. About the same as the S-35, which means it actually has a pretty decent rate of fire. So that is something, to keep in mind while utilising the StuG. And of course, generally, you want to be rather on top of it. You want to be, quick to pull back in case something goes wrong, quick to advance. But generally, unlike here, have some infantry in front of it, having it support the infantry, preferably. The situation here being slightly more unusual in that case, and probably also use the StuG in perhaps not the best way. Though again, I mean, you can use it, but be careful, be bloody careful. And certainly know how first to sort of generally use the StuG before you begin using it in ways it is not the best in. But already, of course, is sort of getting to it. I mean, in terms of penetration, it's, for the Tier 3 vehicles that is sort of here, it's got the best one, but for example, in comparison to a Pack or a Panther, I mean, it's not going to quite cut it. But again, the high rate of fire, and also the fact that, alongside the Panther, it's pretty much the longest range sort of non-doctrine vehicle in the German army, rather makes up for that to a certain extent. It won't outrange an S-35, but again, if you're getting StuGs to deal with S-35 specifically, you might be doing something wrong. That is not to say you can't deal with an S-35 using StuGs, but it does require a bit of tactics and a bit of clever. So good thing there to keep in mind on top of things as well. But here we see, you know, infantry leading the way, StuG following up on the infantry. Infantry leading the way, spotting for the StuG, guarding against any sort of nastiness that might occur. And there we go, we're seeing here, nice shot there. Scout car with snipers went kaput. So, you know, utilising your StuG, you can actually get out a decent amount of destructive firepower out of this lovely piece of German machinery. But again, general rule of thumb as we saw there, have infantry lead the way or shield it, screen it, then have the StuG follow up or, you know, stand behind it. That is generally how the StuG performs best. And that's overall a good rule when it comes to assault guns and tank destroyers. Infantry screens or leads the way, StuG, tank destroyer or other assault gun follows after. Hopefully that's a bit clear. And of course right here we also see a fresh ability has been added to the Sturmgeschütz, the veterans one, target weak point. It doubles the penetration, meaning unless it's an IS-2, it can pretty much penetrate anything from the front. Although it even has a decent chance with an IS-2, that is, that's not to say it doesn't have. And when that happens, it stuns the vehicle, and that pretty much means a free shot for the StuG. In particular, as against more veterans can fire several shots faster, it can even mean up to 2 shots at veterancy 3. That's not bad either. And overall, in fact, is a really powerful ability if well handled. It's the sort of thing that can give you an advantage in an armoured fight. It can also allow you to sort of say, oh, hit the enemy is pulling away that tank, target weak point. All of a sudden, you have the chance there to actually wipe it out instead of allowing your opponent to pull it up. So in that regard, you know, it can be used to quickly inflict some additional loss to your opponent, or quickly to buy yourself some time in an engagement where things perhaps not going well. Target weak point, focus down that tank, then quickly deal with the other one, as an example. Also, it's really helpful against, again, say the IS-2. It's really one of my preferred ways of dealing with an IS-2. Target weak point, hope it penetrates, and then just blast away. Though generally, when it comes to that, you want more than one StuG, and I'll sort of be briefly sort of speeding forwards, and then sort of talk about that, and perhaps in some other bits of the veterancy bonuses. So, hang tight, and back again. We're here, we've slightly progressed. StuG here, the one we saw previously, has now reached veterancy 2, which basically means it gets a slight improvement to rate of fire, nothing big here at veterancy 2, but more importantly, it actually gains the skirts on, which basically means it's going to be a bit tougher. It's going to be harder for the enemy to actually penetrate its frontal armor. Even the rear armor bit, though, that's generally going to really happen with anti-tank grenades. But otherwise, it means it's going to be a bit harder for the opponent's armor to deal with. Overall, it's going to be a lot more valuable. And again, it tends to be a bit faster, though, of course. If you're like me, you add the StuG Lover Bulletin, which actually speeds up veterancy, and generally I would actually recommend going for veterancy bulletins if possible, since they tend to be more accumulative, which generally I believe actually leads to sort of overall fast veterancy gain. Although the StuG Glove only gives 5%, still, you know, as again as that's happened to every shot, I mean, you're still going to find it slightly faster at veterancy 1 than veterancy 2. But overall, I mean, not a bad thing to have. Overall, makes it a bit harder for the opponent to take out even by ramming, which overall makes it a lot more valuable, and again, you generally want to preserve them. Plus, of course, it looks damn cool. But of course, that was not all we wanted to talk about. It's also the fact now, with 2 StuGs, generally they become a lot better. Generally, StuGs tend to work better in groups. Partly because then you can sort of really get off that bad arch effect with 2 of them. But generally, again, you just get that fun again. With veterans on it, it really becomes nice, because then again, you target one and then quickly bring it down. Infantry as well also begin having a lot harder times again as they hit with a continuous stream of fire. And again, the pricing of the StuG, as you remember, 208 manpower, 95 fuel again, means you're overall a bit more likely to achieve that. In general, again, you get sort of more out of it with 2 to 3 StuGs, sort of a battery, if you will, hammering away at your opponent. That generally tends to be, in my opinion, sort of where StuGs tend to be more effective. And historically, StuGs were generally, you know, employed in groups. They were not sort of really meant for you to be used on one-on-one, for example. So generally, again, you know, slightly historical usage there as well, which tends to pay off. It's also generally, you know, again, with 2 or 3, that you can really, you know, put a nice jackboot down an IS-2 commander's throat. Because again, you quickly target weak point off there, stun the IS-2, then you just begin blasting away. And then, for example, if that one quickly alter veterans 1 already has it, of course you can then target weak point afterwards, stunning it again. I mean, it has a nice effect there. You can sort of keep on stunning the IS-2. Though, mind you, it is a slightly expensive ability, but again, it tends to pay off. As for the pencil-mounted machine gun, currently I'd not recommend it. Maybe in the future, where it's been buffed, but I'll probably talk about that in a future Propagandacast or something like that, but until now, I'd probably not recommend it. I mean, you can go for it. It might do a little extra, but overall, I mean, you're not going to lose anything by not going for it. But overall, with a pair of StuGs, you can generally lay down a lot more firepower, which again is rather what you want with them. As a rule of thumb. And again, it's where you generally tend to sort of really get the fun stuff going, is when you have several StuGs firing down at the same target, or say a T-34, 85 or whatever. Again, you can generally sort of really do a lot of damage quickly, making it a lot harder for your opponent to react, but also forcing them to be a lot more cautious. Of course, you have to be careful about placing them too close either, so for example, in case all just sort of, I mean, if the tank drives around them again, both of them will have to keep turning around, which all means the screw generally, I mean, it's nice to have a bit of spread, so you, for example, again, in case if one gets outmaneuvered, the other one has a better chance of dealing with it. So that is something to also keep in mind. Right here, of course, I'm a bit more emboldened by the fact I have eventually two StuG, which again means it's less likely to sort of be penetrated from the front, and thus more likely to shrug off a few shots here and there. Of course, at the same time, I'm not completely daft. But again, good usage of a StuG. Getting some numbers in of them, again, you know, really gives you that nice volley effect, or barrage or battery effect with them, which overall really can put some pressure on your opponent. Infantry or armor-wise, though, generally tends to be more in the direction of armor, but even against infantry, it can actually cause your opponent a bit of harm, a bit of pain, a bit of discomfort. And of course, eventually, they actually become a bit more mobile, but again, they also gain that further rate of fire bonus, which again really makes a Veteran 3 StuG nasty. And again, they are more likely to hit Veteran 3 than most other German armor. Again, in particular, if well handled. So, that concludes this Propagandacast layer on the Sturmgeschütz 3, giving up some basic ideas of it, even some basic tactics, you know, how to utilize it, how to get the most out of it, and again, the recommendation that generally you'll want more than one. 2 to 3, you can always get some other tanks after that, but generally, I mean, you really get the most out of them with 2 or 3 of them to really provide some nice support for your infantry forces. And generally, I mean, you want to have them, if you have some infantry forces, then your infantry again acts sort of the screen, the eyes and ears. The StuG supports the infantry, blasts away at any nasties with a nice volley effect, be it infantry, armor, dug-in positions, you name it, they'll shoot away and they will cause your opponent quite an amount of grief. In particular, again, with target weak point, you can really add in some pain, and again, quickly lock down any priority targets, or quickly, you know, give yourself some time in a nasty engagement by again sort of targeting out the most advancing targets. Stop that. That might even block up the entire column if he attacks like that. So hopefully, with this in mind, people will have a greater understanding of the might of the Sturmgeschütz, a better understanding, but of course also perhaps understanding, you know, how to defeat, because again, in many regards, while it can lay down a lot of fight, it's not as durable or armored as the Su-85. In fact, it has less armor, and also less range. So I mean, that for example is one thing, that it's also to an extent rather vulnerable to field guns, and again, that's also something you want to be careful about. Also, another little tip, I mean, you have Jaeger armor or mechanized, I mean, getting spotting scopes for them is not a bad idea, since that really allows them to get most of their range out of without having to have infantry up front. Another little helpful suggestion there by the end, but overall, you know, get a few of them, have them support your infantry, or, well, for that matter, armor as well. Generally, again, they are used for supporting other units. Use target weak point, and, you know, be sensible about them. Use the range, use the high rate of fire, blast infantry, armor into the dust. Hopefully, again, you've learned something from this, hopefully been inspired to either fight better with it or against it, if that is the matter. I mean, if you have a problem with StuGs, though, I don't think most people use them that much, or to that great a degree, but still, might happen. Again, good use of the StuG can, you know, give you quite a punch without having to expend nearly as many resources on, say, a Panzer IV, and can also, again, you know, be usually, again, a nice way of dealing with an IS-2, and generally, I use StuGs to actually deal with an IS-2 personally. So a little something there to keep in mind. But again, hope you enjoyed it, hope you learned something from it. If you did, want to subscribe, tell your friends, share it. If not, send in a replay and provide some feedback in the comments. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.